On behalf of Thomson Reuters, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and welcome you to Eurofinance. During the next 15 minutes, I will try to cover some of the many phases of MiFID II. Obviously, when we are talking about regulations and MiFID II particularly, there are many phases and many topics to be covered. We'll try to keep it down to 15 minutes. But most importantly, there is one main question to be answered. Is it a cost? Is it a compliance exercise to be completed? Or is it an opportunity? So definitely we will discover this in 18 on the 4th of January. But there are some topics and some key components of the regulation which are worth some attention. As you know, I mean, you probably know all the story around MiFID II, but the Markets in Financial Instruments Directive 2 and its regulation component, MiFIR, are coming into effect in less than 100 days. So we are there. And we should never forget the reasons why MiFID II and MiFIR were introduced: to make this market, the financial market, more reliable, trustable, robust. And MiFID II and MiFIR impact everybody. Basically, if you're on the sell side, on the buy side of the market, if you're a bank, if you're a corporate, there is an impact for you. And there are different phases, there are different pillars on which MiFID II is built on and which are relevant. Today we will not cover all the things, but we'll try to focus on some key elements around the market structure, the transparency and the best execution, which are key to your activity, your daily activity. Now, I will quickly go through this, which explains graphically and visually how the new market structure will be as of the 3rd of January. And there is a reason why I'm explaining this, which is linked to the behaviors you can expect from your counterparties as a corporate, the behaviors from the banks. So the market and the way you can go and trade and access liquidity will be divided in two blocks: the multilateral environment and the bilateral one. On the multilateral side, in orange, you have exchanges, the regulated markets. You have MTF, the multilateral trading facilities, and the OTF, the organized trading facilities. On the right side, in gray, you have bilateral, so the OTC way, let's call it a nice phone call to close a deal, or the systematic internalizers, which is basically banks, financial firms internalizing, dealing on their own account and capturing the orders from their clients. Now, why am I telling you this? Because there is one thing which is very key to ESMA and to MiFID II, which is the attempt to push activity from right to left, from OTC, from bilateral to electronic and multilateral, which is perceived as safer, more secure, more traceable. The key thing which is changing in the market is that the systematic internalizer regime has been changed. It's very heavy for banks to become a systematic internalizer, and one of the ways the banks can avoid to become a systematic internalizer is to move their flows into trading venues electronically. And that is why you will see many banks trying to list and offer also an MTF as a channel to provide liquidity to their clients, because this will save them from becoming an MTF, plus all the advantages of working on electronic, on working on a platform instead of working on the phone. You can imagine all the consequences which are related to record keeping, time stamping, and proving even best execution if you're working on the phone compared to working on a platform. One of the key changes of MiFID II is about transparency. There are new requirements and new obligations. It's one of the advantages for the market. ESMA put MiFID II in place exactly for this objective, so to provide more information to the players so that the market is more transparent. And yes, MiFID II is a big data exercise. The more you are able to ingest, to crunch, and to analyze data, the more opportunities you will get out of this regulation. The transparency rules set by MiFID II can be divided quickly in pre-trade and post-trade. On the pre-trade, if we focus on FX, which will be my focus today, there is no pre-trade requirements because FX, believe me or not, has been deemed as illiquid by ESMA. So for the next 1 year, 1.5 years, we benefit from a set of waivers, if we want, and deferrals, thanks to this illiquidity status. But when it comes to post-trade, there are two components which are important. The trade reporting and the transaction reporting. Now, why I'm mentioning this and why there is a small asterisk beside the trade reporting. First, because you don't have to mix the trade reporting from MiFID II with the trade reporting coming through EMIR. They are completely different things, although they have the same name. They are completely different obligations. But you have two obligations coming with MiFID II, the trade reporting and the transaction reporting. The trade reporting will collect information that will be sent and shared to the public through an approved publication arrangement. The transaction reporting is different. It's more intrusive. It's increasing the number of fields from 23 to 65, and some of the fields include also the passport numbers and the identification codes of the people, the individuals, or the algos sometimes, taking the investment decision. And this information is sent to the national competent authorities. So there is a full set of obligations and new requirements coming with MiFID II that you should be aware of. Now, what is the solution? The solution is, together with what we mentioned before, to access a multilateral trading facility. You can expect banks to push this move into the electronic platform because they want to avoid the systematic internalizer. Although it's fair to say that some of the banks will be systematic internalizer, can be systematic internalizer, and will transform this into an opportunity, into a competitive advantage, keeping the market OTC or keeping the market on the phone because they can absorb the cost of being a systematic internalizer. So using an MTF, we will be licensing our platform as an MTF, FXall. You don't need to worry about the transaction reporting and the trade reporting. This is done completely by the MTF, by the trading venue. And obviously, you are fulfilling one of the objectives of ESMA, which is moving trading activity from the phone, from OTC, from bilateral, into multilateral and electronic. And obviously, we have upgraded our platform to accommodate some of the new requests in terms of fields required by the regulation. And when you put together an MTF with a nice container in brackets that is Thomson Reuters icon, you have the insights, the news, the analytics, and the MTF to access the market and our liquidity pool. Another key component of MiFID II is reference data. You can, I think that one of the key points of MiFID II is data, and reference data play an important role because you need to identify which instruments are subject to the regulation, which instruments benefit from deferral or waivers, and it's not only buying that reference data from a golden source. One of the most important changes of MiFID II and MiFIR is that the way reference data is built is kind of a cooperative effort through which different players, the venues, the ANNA DSB, the Derivative Service Bureau, and other counterparties are creating a database of reference data that we as a vendor, for instance, can facilitate and passing to the market. But there is one key component in reference data which is really important for your activity, and it's called LEI, is Legal Entity Identifier. Now, there is a story, I think you have seen many articles with this kind of mantra, no LEI, no trade. And indeed it's true, because transaction reporting rules are such that you need to provide the LEI of your counterparty. So imagine a bank needs to send the transaction report to the national competent authority for a deal done with you, with a nice corporate treasurer, and they need to put your LEIs in. If they don't have your LEIs, the transaction reporting will be rejected. So this can stop, obviously, the trading activity. So there is a lot of attention going on now on the availability of LEIs. And as you know, LEI is not just a number, it is something more. Is a unique identifier of a counterparty to a transaction. And it's a global standard. It's unique, it's neutral, it's public. And GLAIF, the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, is the owner of the LEI's database. And there are different local operating units which can offer you the LEI. What is extremely important is that you have one by January the 3rd, because without an LEI, transaction reporting will be stopped and trading can be harmed. So there is a lot of exercise being done now by your banking counterparties to make sure they have coverage, they have your LEIs. And by the way, An LEI can be requested, obtained, but needs to be maintained. So it needs to be renewed every year. And I mean, we are assisting the banks with a new service called the Thomson Reuters Profiling Service, which helps the banks to detect out of the clients they have who has not the LEI in place, or if it's obsolete and needs to be renewed. So obviously, the entities which are supposed to create the LEIs are ready to manage the peak that there will be between now and the 3rd of January. But one obviously suggestion is to hurry up on the creation of LEIs. We expect the market to double, even more than double, the number of LEIs available and being generated for you. Best execution, which is the last observation I have and to share with you on MiFID II, is one of the most important changes taking place out of MiFID II. It's not just a semantic change, but we're moving from an environment where the players, the market participants, were requested to take reasonable steps to make sure a best execution is provided to their clients, into a different world where sufficient steps need to be taken to prove best execution, which somehow means a change from something that is reasonable and acceptable into sufficient steps, into precise things that needs to be provided to you on the receiving end in terms of best execution. And most importantly, best execution is not price anymore. It's not just price. There are different components that needs to be considered when providing a best execution. Is obviously price, is speed, is likelihood of execution, which reminds me something about last look issues we had in the past, cost, the nature of the order, and the size of the order itself. So 6 components which are key to defining a policy of best execution. So it's not just price, it's a policy that needs to be put in place. And what you can expect from your counterparties is reporting, is transaction cost analysis tool to monitor the execution, and their activities to monitor if they are breaching and if their policy is still valid. So a lot of information. The RTS 27 and RTS 28 will give you obviously files of data that needs to be ingested and understood in order to transform these into an opportunity, a better understanding of how you have been treated by your counterparties in terms of quality of execution. And even without thinking about rules and regulation, I mean, since the 25th of May in the FX market, we have the FX Global Code of Conduct. Obviously, it's not a regulation, it's just a global code. But there is a lot of attention by central banks. And the Global Code of Conduct is not just for banks. It affects all market participants, including a corporate treasury department. And it's built around 6 leading principles that you have here listed: ethics, governance, execution, information sharing, risk management, and confirmation. In the execution principle, there is one specific mention to best execution, and it says that market participants, including corporate treasury departments, should regularly evaluate the quality of the execution. So this matches a growing need in the market, which is the availability of transaction cost analysis tools. So your ability to evaluate, to judge the quality of the execution that you are receiving. And just as an example, I mean, in Thomson Reuters, we have built an important partnership with BestX, which is a technology company which provides BestX for FX, because what you can find in the market is that a lot of the TCA tools are equity TCA tools transformed to cover also the foreign exchange. And it's important to have a TCA tool which is for FX, built for FX, and leveraging the quality of the data behind. And definitely here we play a role with our experience on the FX market and with our platforms and prices. So understanding what you get from your counterparties helps you make a better business, because you can evaluate your liquidity providers, you can evaluate your counterparties, and it's obviously common sense, but now it's becoming more important, more and more important. And MiFID II and MiFIR will generate data that you can absorb, read, and transform into a better way of doing your business. Now, where we are and what is the change that MiFID II will trigger on the 4th of January or even on the 3rd of January. We asked the market a few months ago, where are you? I mean, are you ready? And definitely we can say that the majority of the market is unsure, is not that confident. And we can expect a kind of a slow start. Definitely we cannot expect a delay. Don't forget that MiFID II, MiFIR are already in place as a law since 2014, and that we already benefit a 1-year delay last year. So there would be no exceptions and no exemptions made by the national competent authorities and by ESMA. But definitely we can expect them to consider and to act proportionately, because this is a big, big change for the market, and definitely a change which, I mean, I'm a positive person by nature, and when I see change, I see opportunity. But definitely the MiFID II and MiFIR implementation is a cost. We cannot avoid this consideration. There is a lot of investment in IT, in infrastructure, in teams, in consultancy, and there are different ways of reacting to these. So wherever you are in the process and wherever you are in your readiness, it's important to stress that it's not just a compliance tick box. MiFID II and MiFIR are opportunities to revisit your model, your business model, the way you handle data. Are you buying data for each regulation? Is it just buying things for EMIR, buying things for MiFID II, and then have another source of database for GDPR or whatever new regulation or market abuse we will have in the future? Having a platform that can handle all the data required for all the different regulations we have and will have in the future is definitely a different way of approaching, even from an IT perspective and market data perspective, regulations that are heavy like MiFID II and MiFIR. Now, I think I've finished my 15, 17 minutes, and I would like to thank you for your attention. We have a nice website, which is mifid2.com, easy to remind. We're here at our stand to answer your questions and show what we can provide. But if there is any question now that I can try to answer, please let me know.